It's 12:30. And welcome you to the Strathcona Regional District Board meeting for October 21st. And I'll have confirmation of quorum, please.
Yeah, we got quorum.
Okay. I'll call the meeting to order. Can I have a motion to adopt the public agenda, please? Moved by Director Lee. Second by Director Wally. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, carried. There's no petitions or delegations. Can I have a motion to adopt the minutes of the regular meeting October 7th? Moved by Director Colburn. Director Kerr seconded. Anyone opposed? Call it carried. Any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none.
I have something.
Okay, go ahead, Director Lee.
I just sent a note. Business arising. May I have an update on the right-of-way agreement regarding the Oyster River well?
CEO.
Sure. Yeah, sure. You want that right now?
Yeah, might as well.
Okay, Aniko could probably best give that to you. Or Tom.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The right-of-way agreement with the CBRD regarding the Oyster River Nature Park Trail access agreement for the new well and existing infrastructure is currently in the final stages. We are just confirming 2 more items on the list and approving the new right-of-way plan, and the board should see it at the next meeting. Thank you.
So not for another few weeks.
We did not receive through the chair, we did not receive the information in order to get the item on this agenda. So I'm assuming we will have it for the next board meeting.
Okay, is there anything I can help with on that?
No, I want to add though that we do have a working agreement that no work is being upheld as a result of the agreement being finalized. So there's been lots of progress made on the physical work. So it's not like the agreement's holding up anything that we're doing.
Okay, yeah, I heard that it might be on this agenda today, so I was sort of looking for it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You. Anything else on the business rising? Saying none, won't carry on to the chair. Nothing for public considerations. I don't see any notice of motion. Under chair's report, the only thing I can report, I believe we had a very good cow meeting last week with the First Nation, and looking forward as we move forward to spring of next year, April, I believe it is of next year, when they become a full member. And I seen a note earlier from Kevin Jules that he'll join the meeting here a little late. Motion to receive my verbal report. Director Evans, thank you. Director Kerr, thank you. Seconder. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, carried. Under report, Electoral Area Service Committee, motion to receive. Director Wally, seconder. Director Lee. Anything to add, CEO?
No.
Thank you. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, carried. Strathcona Gardens Commission, motion received. Report. Director Adams, second by Director Kerr. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Call carried. Committee Hall, motion received the minutes. Director Adams, Director Wally. Anything to add? Seeing none, anyone opposed? Seeing none, call carried. No external reports, staff reports, Quadro Links, Director Abram.
So moved.
Seconder. Director Colburn, thank you. Anything to add, Director Abram?
No, I think it's very clear, and that the covenant will still apply to the golf course, and that is what it was intended for. So the housing development can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, call it carried. And item B,
So moved.
Joe, second by Director Lee. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, call it carried. Item 2, Strathcona Gardens Recreation Complex, motion received. Director Adams, Director Lee. Any add, CEO?
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair?
Joe, any discussion? Seeing none. Call question, all opposed? Seeing none, call carried. Item B. Moved by Director Kerr. Second by Director Lee. Any discussion? Seeing none, anyone opposed? I'll call it carried. Item 3, BC Ferry Authority nomination to board. Is CO. Motion to receive.
I moved it.
Thank you, Director Abrams, seconded. Director Wally, CO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tom will speak to this.
Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This report is simply to advise the board that an opportunity exists, should it wish to do so, to participate in the nomination process for an opening on BC Ferry Board of Authority, or BC Ferry Authority Board of Directors. There are 5 regional districts in this particular region, and in communication with the others, none of them have an interest in doing a joint submission process. So it's really up to the board if you wish to participate at all, and if so, how you wish to do that. So those options are in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you. And Director Wally.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I nominate Director Abram to the BC Ferry Board.
If I can, Mr. Chair, I do not believe an elected official can be nominated to this.
That is correct.
Okay. So it'd be a staff member that appointed?
Mr. Chairman, if I could, the in the report, we go into some detail as to what the board has done in the past. We've called for nominations from the public and accepted those and brought them to the board. In those cases where the board has decided to participate, and other times the board has decided not to participate, but it would be our recommendation to either take nominations submitted by board directors, or alternatively to call for members of the public to self-nominate. Thank you.
Thank you. And Director Abram has comment.
Yeah, well, my comment was going to be that I would accept it, but I guess since I'm an elected official, I can't. So thank you to my nominator and seconder. And I guess I have to respectfully decline.
Thank you.
I'd like to move that we advertise for the position representing Strathcona on the BC Ferries Board.
Okay,
And yeah,
Mr. Chair, if I may, you still have a motion on the floor to receive the report.
okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah, once receipt's over.
Okay. Any more discussion on receipt? Seeing none, anyone opposed? Seeing none, I call it carried. Okay, so Director Lee.
I'd move that the SRD advertise the position for a seat on the BC Ferries Board representing Strathcona.
Thank you. And seconder is Director Anderson. Any other discussion? Seeing none, call question. Anyone opposed? Call out carried. Thank you. Item 4, proposed visitor radio service. Motion received the report. Director Kerr, seconder. Director Wally, CO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the board may remember that we provided access to visitor radio on Strathcona Gardens as part of a a trade that we had a little advertising promotion through that radio station, and it provided community weather, maybe some traffic, some sailing information. Then it came a time where Visitor Radio felt they were no longer viable anymore and offered to the SRD to purchase it. We did purchase that. The board decided to. Very small amount of money, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, I think. So now we have access to this, and it's just staff's direction that we should develop a policy for what kind of material we should promote through the city, through the Visitor Radio service.
Okay, thank you. I've got Director Wally and then Director Davis. Director Wally, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, a question to the CAO. Does this service turn a profit with its advertising potentially, or is there a net cost annually to the SRD? How does this work?
If I can, Mr. Chair, I think it possibly could. So I doubt Visitor Radio made much of anything, and that's probably why they went out of business and or sold it to us for very little money. I think there's opportunity though for all our communities to, I don't know how many people listen to the radio anymore, but it has very low cost and operating costs for us, and it might be an opportunity, yes, for us to all promote community events and sell advertising if that's possible. I'm not a radio guy. I don't know how many people listen to it. I don't know how much money there is out for advertising, but I do know the cost of operating it's pretty low.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Director Wally?
I think that'll do for now. Thanks.
Okay, Director Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Through to the CAO. I don't know if you're going to have the answer to this. Do you have any idea of the range of it?
I don't. I believe a few of the directors have commented to me before, though, they've been driving up Island, that they've maybe accidentally tuned into it or not. But I think the range is within the regional district.
Mr. Chair,
Okay.
If I may jump in, I do believe the range is pretty much confined to the Greater Campbell River area. I don't think it would reach across Island, for example, or possibly not even as far as Sayward.
So no idea of the wattage?
I think
No.
Mr. Chair, it's Sean, if I may come in.
Go ahead,
Under
Sean.
the CRTC, Visitor Radio is limited to 100 watts, which brings it in from about Stories Beach in Area D to Ripple Rock in Electoral Area A, with some portions of East Quadra Island included with the current system and antenna that's it's hooked up to.
Thank you, Mr. Corbett. Okay, anything else, Director Davis?
No, that's good, thanks.
Could I make one for Mr. Chair?
Sure, go ahead.
Don't want to be a stick in the mud here, but from what I hear, it obviously isn't going to reach Sayward or very much of Area A at all. I wonder if this would be better served if it was a service for those areas that it does have some benefit to. I can't see how it would benefit Area A.
Okay, thank you. Director Lee, you have a comment?
Yes, I believe that we should only use it for public service announcements and emergencies. I don't really agree with competing with the two existing radio stations in this region for the advertising revenue. And I don't believe it's going to be cost neutral. I think it'll cost more than it brings in anyway. So, but for, you know, if possible to use it in an emergency or for public service announcements, I think it might have some use.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else, anything to add? Director Anderson.
Thank you. I'm wondering if staff, perhaps Sean, has any idea, I just don't know anything about this radio at all, like who does put the messaging together that goes out on it? How is it run or operated at all? Thanks.
So through the chair to Director Anderson, previously it was the owner of Visitor Radio who would go to the gardens about twice a month, plug in the MP3 player with the latest information on it. But that is what we are hoping to formalize in the policy, is how that programming would occur everything that would go on visitor radio in lines with the CRTC guidelines. And just to throw in a side comment to Director Davis's bit on the range, that's not saying that somewhere down in the future we could install a similar setup on the same frequency elsewhere in the regional district in our rural communities. We would just have to make sure there would be no radio interference with the system in Campbell River. And the odds of a 100-watt radio system in Tassus interfering with a 100-watt radio system in Campbell River, even though they're on the same frequency, is likely minimal.
Okay, thank you. And Director Kerr.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I think that answered my question, whether or not, it's possible to maybe up the wattage or the coverage from this location. But if that doesn't make sense from a financial point of view, that, maybe having additional repeaters or units around the SRD, I think it is a good idea to have our SRD covered by something like this, and just for information or in a case of emergencies. So we, maybe it's something that could be done, with a quick staff report to let us know what the potential cost would be of expanding it.
Okay, thank you, Director Kerr.
So through, and sorry, Sean again here. So through the chair to Director Kerr, right now the maximum, we can't go higher on the wattage as that's strictly regulated by the CRTC, but we could probably recognize improvement in coverage from a higher quality antenna.
Hi Brenda, it's Linda Dumont speaking. I just needed to pick your brain about a couple of things.
Okay, and we have Director Anderson. Do you have a question?
Sorry, just the other half that I thought. Is it possible to find out the listenership, and would the staff report be able to share that if possible, and any ideas about how to increase it? Because, all of our wonderful emergency programming ideas, if nobody's tuning in, then might we look at, at closing said radio, either making it useful or not using it? Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly look into all of those things for sure.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Anything else on the report? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Sorry, call opposed. Carried. Item B, the policy regarding guidelines be for the use of 93.1 be prepared for the board's consideration. Director Adams, second by Director Lee. Thank you. Any other discussion? Director Abram.
Yeah, Director. Yeah, just maybe that motion could be a friendly amendment rather than a policy regarding guidelines, et cetera, that more information regarding the use of would be more appropriate.
No, I take that as two separate motions. The policies regarding asking for more information.
Okay, well, I can't support creating a policy for something we know so little about when there have been some very valid questions raised at the board table today.
Mr. Chairman, could I jump in here? I do believe that a staff report would have to accompany the policy document with an explanation and a backgrounder, basically dealing with all of the questions that have been raised today, because there are a lot of issues that need to be sorted through in conjunction with adopting a policy.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Director Adams.
Thank you, and just what Mr. Koopman and Mr. Yates have said, this is just direction to develop a policy for the board's consideration that will take into consideration the comments raised today.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, call question. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, I'll call it carried. Thank you. Item number 5, proposed policy, abandoned bylaws. Motion to receive the report. Director Abram, seconder. Director Adams, thank you. CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tom will speak to this as well.
Cool.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As noted in the report, there are quite a number of bylaws that are have been sitting in limbo for, in some cases, close to 10 years. We're proposing that a policy be developed for the board to look at and consider that would give some direction as to how we should be dealing with these bylaws. And so that is what we're asking the board to authorize today.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Director Abram.
Yes, thank you. I believe that we already do have a written policy in place for planning bylaws. Any bylaw or application that comes forward to the planning department, if it remains inactive by the applicant for over a year, then it goes back to the applicant to have to reapply and pay new fees, et cetera. So it disappears off the books, basically. But I see in that listing, there are many bylaws that are in there that these are not what I would consider abandoned bylaws. They are bylaws that we have been unable to get at because of the fact that we have been limited in our staffing with our planning department, and no fault of their own, but the fact that they haven't been done just means we haven't been able to have the capacity. So I would hate to see any of those bylaws dropped off the books at this time before we have a full staffing complement and get started on those bylaws. I also have a question concerning, there were 2 on there that have lines drawn through them for Area C. I'm not sure what those lines meant, why the lines are there. If that could be explained, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, would you like me to explain that to Director
Yes,
Abram?
please.
At the time this report was initially drawn up, those 2 bylaws, I think it's 94, 95, had not been touched in years and years. And as it so happened, at the last board meeting, they came forward because there was a trigger pulled in terms of moving them, advancing them through the approval process. So rather than take them off the list, I just struck a line through them because they're no longer bylaws that have not been touched in years.
Okay, thank you. That
with
explains it.
I'm sorry. With respect to the earlier comment from Director Abram, yes, it is true that when planning bylaws sit for a certain length of time, the applicants are advised that they must resubmit their application in order to give it consideration. However, the bylaws themselves that were created are still in existence, and they just continue to sit forever. So that's really the intent of this proposal, is to have a policy that will provide some guidance for staff to bring these things back to the board periodically to be dealt with, and either to be defeated or to live on for a further period of time or some other action. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Tom. Anything else, Director Abram?
No, other than the fact that a number of the bylaws, like has been mentioned, are ones that are just sitting there, and they do need further direction, but I think the direction has been continually given over the years to continue with them. But as I said before, we don't have the capacity. So that sort of takes them out of that category of no direction. We do have direction, and we do have, in some cases, money set aside for them. So the interest is still there, but we just haven't been able to get to them as a regional district. So I think, in this policy, that needs to be considered very carefully as to whether or not I think everything should have to come back to the board to give us as directors the opportunity to say, yes, we want to continue with that, or we don't want to continue with it.
Okay,
Not
I
just
think
have them disappear.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I think that's exactly what staff's trying to do, is just, have that policy for that. Correct.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, thank you. Director Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to say that with regard to the bigger sort of overview bylaws like zoning bylaws or OCPs, the reason they're sitting there and they haven't been passed is that they went to the public and the public didn't endorse them fully, and they were waiting for amendments or, you know, some other actions to be taken. However, after a few years, maybe, you know, I don't know the length of time, but there's a turnover of population. There's a change in how people view what's being proposed. And you can't just bring back an old bylaw that's been, you know, molding in the closet for the last 5 years and expect the public to buy into it. You should start again and get a decent overview of what the public wants, especially for OCPs. I know the Cortez zoning bylaw had some real problems when we went to public hearing on it. And the person who was managing planning at the time is long gone.
Yeah,
And
that's
so I don't know how you resurrect some of those old bylaws that are flawed and the staff component is gone.
Yeah, so Director, we're a little off topic there. We're just looking at it's a draft policy for dealing with them, not actually getting involved in them, so.
Good,
Well,
I hope you're not getting involved in land use in the electoral areas.
no, okay. Any other discussion? Okay, on the report, anyone opposed? Seeing none, I'll call it carried. Item B, a draft policy for dealing with abandoned bylaws be prepared for consideration by the board. Motion to do so. Director Anderson, Director Davis. Any other discussion? Seeing none. Anyone opposed? Call it carried. Item 6, proposed financial plan grant and aid policy. Motion to receive the report. Director Moldov, Director Evans. Any discussion? Director Abram.
Yes, I have a comment. Mr. Chair, I would like to, I've given you and Edie both a copy of a motion I'd like to make at this time to.
We're still on receipt.
Okay, so on receipt, that's fine. Moved and seconded, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Director Anderson.
Thank you. I too have offered some suggested amendments to Edie, so I don't know what chair the best proposal is here. I don't know what Director Abram has in mind. Just in terms of the report itself, their staff certainly did a decent job of capturing a bunch of the input received from the electoral area committee that I was at, but we didn't as a committee, to my memory anyway, make motions specifically regarding suggested amendments. We just gave input and staff took that input down and collated into this report. So I don't know if the input needed to be received by 2 or 3 or more people to land, but there's certainly some input that I gave that didn't land there. I think it's important for the whole board to have comfort in a grant and aid policy, and I support having one. I would like to actually have referred to the old one. I was looking for it yesterday and couldn't find it in any of the reports because I think it had some language worth pulling from. But I do have a number of amendments that I would need supported by the board before I could support the policy. And so I don't know, Mr. Chair, how you want to proceed here, but I do have some suggestions around mostly deleting certain bullets or certain sections or just adding a simple wording, and Edith does have that.
Okay, thank you. We'll carry on with the receipt first and we'll go from there. Anything else on receipt? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, sorry. You get used to one way, it's hard to get back to the other one. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, I'll call it carried. So then I'll go back to Director Abram.
Thank you very much. I'd like to have the motion considered that I believe Edie has up on the board. I can't see, but maybe she does, and that you have in front of you, that the board refer the grant and aid policy to the EASC for a staff report to identify the impacts to community organizations that will be affected by the proposed grant and aid policy. So there's
Okay,
just a simple referral motion back and it'll come back to the board.
Okay, and I have a seconder by Director Wally. So any discussion? Director Anderson.
Yes, if I might. So this isn't a deferral, so I can speak to the contents of the issue. Is that right?
It actually should be a deferral,
Okay,
but I don't know how you defer to a committee. I guess that's possible. But the intent of it is defer.
okay,
I'm just asking procedurally if I can speak to the content.
okay. I'm gonna go to Tom, please. Tom, can you help me here? So it's a deferred motion, so it's time and place, correct?
And my belief is that that would be correct, Mr. Chairman. If on the other hand, a referral does not necessarily exclude other actions on the part of the board, or even necessarily doing it before or after adopting a resolution. So a deferral typically limit the discussion, yes.
Okay, so looking at Director Abrams' motion, this is the
Okay,
board
so
defer it.
So just on appropriateness, then I'll limit my comments. I don't. I might be all right with supporting it, but I don't know where it gets us because it's been at EASC and there was a bunch of comments made by EASC members. So if I could just hear from the mover what the intended, because if staff bring back a report, they don't know necessarily the impacts on community organizations. That would be more in the purview of the elected members. So I'm just not clear what this is trying to achieve.
Okay, so I'm going to go to Director Moglove and then to the CEO. Director Moglove.
Thanks. Not to get into the weeds here, but this is a referral motion. It's not a deferral. Deferral means you postpone something to another date. Referral means you're referring it to another committee or another organization or to staff. So in my view, this is clearly a referral motion, not a deferral motion. This is not it's not postponing to another date. It is referring it to another committee.
Okay, thank you. CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I agree with Director Moglove's comments. Second of all, I think if Director Anderson has a bunch of motions, it's clear if the board passes this, there will be obviously some discussion at EASC and the opportunity to provide motions to the board.
Okay, thank you. Director Abram.
Yeah, if I could, as I said back a while ago, that actually I should have been clearer. It should have read defer, and I always get the two mixed up. It is to defer the grant and aid policy from this meeting to another meeting and then come back eventually after these other impacts that we did not have any discussion about whatsoever at the local committees. So, I think it would be appropriate for us to have as much information as possible before we do something as far-reaching as this policy. So I would like it to be defer the grant and aid policy to the ASC for a staff report to identify the impacts to community organizations that will be affected by the proposed grant and aid policy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Director Adams.
Just call the question.
Call the question on deferral. Question's been called. Anyone opposed? Director Moglove. I'll call that carried. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, board.
We'll move on. Number 7, emergency program modernization report to CEO be received.
Put the agenda on the screen, please.
Oh, sorry. There we go. Item number 7, emergency program act modernization. Need a motion to receive.
So moved.
Thank you, Director Adams. Director Davis. CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe Sean will speak to this for us.
Sure. Mr. Goodman.
So through the chair to the board, back in January, the regional district submitted a report to Emergency Management BC on their proposed changes to the Emergency Program Act modernization, with direct support of 19 of the 45 proposed changes and support of the 26 other proposed changes, but with conditions included. EMBC took our report and 238 other submissions from local governments, First Nations, critical infrastructure providers, the general public, non-governmental organizations, and put together the compilation What We Heard report, which is attached to the file in front of you. And what I've tried to do is extract a couple of the most relevant bullet points from the What We Heard report that focuses on the local government perspective of the possible changes coming from the Emergency Program Act. I don't have much more inside knowledge on this than the general public. EMBC is, of course, keeping this policy change pretty tight-lipped. The only thing that I can say is that this What We Heard report was supposed to come out in the spring and the new policy coming into play this fall. However, that's been delayed by COVID-19, and we're not expecting the new policy, the Emergency Program Act policy, to roll into place until spring of 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Copeland. Any other questions? Seeing none, call question. Anyone opposed to report? Seeing none, the call carried. Item 8, Regional Board Chair, election process. Motion to receive the report. Director Evans. Do I have a seconder? Director Davis. CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tom will speak to this for us.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the report lays out an alternative for conducting the vote for chair and vice chair at next month's inaugural board meeting. We've been looking for some time at a system whereby, given the remote participation by directors, that directors do not have to disclose how they vote, assuming there's more than one candidate for these positions. So the system that we've identified, I think, would give us the ability to conduct a vote remotely for directors to cast their votes without staff or anybody else knowing the particulars of each vote being cast. In other words, which candidate directors are voting for. So we are recommending that we proceed on that basis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Any questions? Seeing none, call question. Anyone opposed to the report? Seeing none, I call that carried. And item B. Need to move for item B. Director Wally. Director Kerr. Any other discussion? Seeing none. Anyone opposed? Not seeing anything, call that carried. Next item, number 9, request for economic development funding Quadra Circle Community Connection Society. Director Abram. Motion received.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to move receipt
Second by
of the
Director
report.
Wally. Thank you. And do we have any questions? Nothing. I'll call question on the report. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the call carried. And item B, that the board approve the economic development grant.
So
Director,
moved.
thank you, Director Ingham. Second by Director Lee. Any discussion? Seeing none. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, I'll call carried. On the end, bylaws. Number 1, bylaw 403, Quetzalcoatl Cove Sewer Extension Parcel Tax. Director Abram.
So moved on
Thank you.
the report.
Thank you. And seconder, Director Wally. Any discussion? No other discussion. I'll call question. All those in favor of the report? Call carried. We've got item B. Director Abram.
Yes, so moved, and I will have an amendment on item C.
Okay, thank you. And second by Director Wally. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Call it carried. Item C, the rule suspended by bylaw 403 to be given in second and third readings. Director Abram?
If I may, then I would move that with the amendment that after third readings, the words third readings, and that a letter of complete and comprehensive explanation be sent to each affected property owner prior to final adoption.
So if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I've got a seconded by Director Adams, so it's seconded. Go ahead, CEO.
I mean, we have communicated so frequently with these folks. I mean, I'm not sure it's necessary to add to the motion. It can be direction to staff that we again send out a letter, but I can assure the board that we have communicated with these folks frequently.
And if I could add, Mr. Chairman, under your procedure bylaw, motions to give a reading to a bylaw cannot be combined with other actions because it forces the director to accept all of the actions as a bundle or reject all of the actions as a bundle. And if a reading of a bylaw is rejected, the bylaw is done. And so that is why your bylaw specifies you cannot combine reading of a bylaw with other actions.
Okay, so then saying that, the second part that Director Abrams wanted to add is no longer added.
It would be my recommendation, Mr. Chairman, that it be put forward as a separate motion if Director Abram wishes to have the board consider that.
Okay, thank you. So we're back to C, as it is written.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I would move C as written with the plan to have another amendment in between C and D.
Okay, well, as soon as we finish C, then you can bring that forward.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so any more questions on C as is written? See none, call question. Anyone opposed? Call that carried. Director Abram, you want to amend to add one?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate staff's comments, Dave's comments, that there has been a lot of communication with the community regarding this issue, but with the feedback that I'm getting on a daily basis, it's obviously not getting through to them. And unless they have a letter in their hand that says, this is what this means, I don't think they're going to get it. So I would like to say as C1 that a letter of complete and comprehensive explanation be sent to each affected property owner prior to final adoption.
That's way too fast.
I'm sorry. I didn't have this written up for Edie.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's trying. Go slower, please, Director Abram.
Okay. So I would say that a letter of complete and comprehensive explanation be sent to each affected property owner prior to final adoption. And if I may.
Do I have a seconder? Second by Director Wally. And I have a question by Director Adams.
Thank you. I think I heard Mr. Leach that there has been a significant amount of communication that's come out, and appreciate what Director Abrams is intending here. However, the words of complete and comprehensive are very subjective to interpretation by the recipients of the information. And I'm wondering if that is being too prescriptive.
Okay, thank you, Director Adams. CEO.
If I can also add, Mr. Chair, on the heels of Mr. Yates's comment, I would not tie it to prior to final adoption. If you want a letter and the board passes it, just put a period after owner.
Okay, thank you. Director Abram.
Okay, I appreciate Director Adams' comments. I assumed that complete and comprehensive was going to be interpreted by our CAO and our corporate officer, not by the people that received the letter, but by the people that wrote it. So I'm sure that, you know, they understand what that means. The putting a period after owner, that's fine, except that would mean that this puts it into the immediate category because our minutes go online, in a day or two. So that means that people are going to read that it has been passed and they still don't understand it. So hopefully they will get that letter like ASAP so that they will understand it, because otherwise I'm just going to have to try and explain it, and I'll be darned if I'm capable of explaining the complexities of this particular issue.
Okay.
This
So
is a staff issue.
Okay, so as a mover, you're okay with striking out prior to final adoption, put a period after owner?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
At the advice of our CAO.
Thank you.
Director
Wally.
Our esteemed CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I seconded this motion because I don't see it as too onerous for staff. This is just simply a form letter and put a different address on top of each one, so it should be pretty quick to do.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Director Davis.
Yeah, I just made the comment in chat there that affected should be changed to affected with an A.
Right, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Martin.
Any other discussion?
One point of order on wordsmithing. Effect is a verb, affect is a noun. This is a verb.
So which is it?
You go look after
It's
it.
an adjective.
Joe, any other discussion? Seeing none. Anyone opposed? Don't see any. Call carried. Then we're on to item D, the bylaw 403 being Quasico Service Parcel Tax 2020 be reconsidered and finally passed and adopted. Director Abram.
You're gonna ask me to okay that, okay? So moved.
Do I have a seconder? Director Wally, thank you.
Agenda,
Any other
please.
discussion? See none. Anyone opposed? See none. I call it carried. Next bylaw 408, 409 LCP amendment.
Agenda, please, Mr. Chair.
Director Wally moved. Do I have a seconder?
Second.
Director Abram, thank you. CO?
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair.
Good. Any other discussion? Seeing none, anyone opposed to the report? Seeing none, call carried. Move to item B. Director Wally.
So moved.
Director Lee seconded. Q. Any discussion? Seeing none. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item C.
Move that bylaw number 408 be given a second reading.
Q. Second by Director Lee. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call it carried. Item D.
Move that bylaw number 409 being a bylaw to amend the zoning regulation for the Menzies Bay area of electoral A be now introduced and read a first time.
Seconded by Director Lee. Any questions? See none, anyone opposed? Call it carried. And I see that Kevin has joined us. Welcome, Kevin. We'll go item E, the bylaw 409 be given second reading.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Director Abram. Anyone opposed? Call it carried. And item F.
I move that a public hearing to consider bylaw number 408 and 409 be authorized to be held virtually starting at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, November 18, 2020, and that the holding of the public hearing be delegated to the directors representing electoral areas A, C, and D, with the directors for electoral A and electoral area
D.
Designated as the chair and vice chair, respectively, for the public hearing.
Given second by Director Adams. Oh, sorry, sir. Yeah, that's right. Your TAs only. Can I have a second from EAs, please?
Second.
Director Abram, thank you. Any further discussion? See none. Anyone opposed? Director Anderson's opposed. Okay, I'll call that carried. Number 3, bylaw 414, Quathy Cove sewer rates. Director Abram, motion to receive the report. Second.
Motion to receive the report.
Okay. Second by Director Wally. CEO.
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair. This has been through EASC.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I call a question. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, I call carried. Item B.
Reluctantly so moved.
Thank you. Second. Director Wally, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, anyone opposed? Seeing none, I call it carried. Item C. Rules be
So
suspended.
moved.
Director Abram. Director Lee. Any other discussion? Seeing none, anyone opposed? Seeing none, call it carried. Item D.
So moved.
Director Abram, second by Director Wally. Any discussion? Seeing none, call carried. Thank you. Item 0, correspondence. We have 2 items. Item 1, Geiger Checklist First Nation membership on regional board. Motion received.
So moved.
Director Abram, second by Director Davis, CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick comment. This is just the Keuket Checklist Set First Nations formal request to the SRD that their intention to join the SRD board as a full member come April 1st, 2021.
Okay, any discussion? No discussion. Thank you. Looking forward to it. It's going to be a better year, 2021. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, I call it carried. Second item, regional interim migration. Motion received.
So moved.
Director Abram, second by Director Evans. Cool. Anything to add, CEO?
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair.
Any discussion? Seeing none. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, I'll call carried. Nothing in members report, no manager report, nothing in new business, no addendum. Move to close. The report to CAO be received. Director Lee. Director Kerr. Anyone opposed? Call that carried. Item B, the closed meeting be held following termination of public meeting to consider matters deemed to follow the parameters of subsections 90C, 91C, E, F, G, H, N, O, and 92B of the community charter. Motion by Director Lee, second by Director Davis. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, call it carried. Motion to terminate.
Not yet. We still have in
All
camera.
right, going to close. Thank you. See you in a minute.
Mr. Chairman, the last motion passed was to have a closed session following termination.
Sorry, was that Tom?
So the motion to terminate would terminate this meeting, and then you would be able to open a closed meeting?
That's what I thought I was doing there. So we don't have a motion to terminate this time?
I'm not aware of one.
Okay, can I have a motion to terminate?
So
Okay.
moved.
Thank you. Second by Director Adams. Anyone opposed? Carried. Thanks, guys.